Right, guys. So, welcome to not another fucking podcast. We got myself, Dan, and today we have got the king of the natural bodybuilders and natural bodybuilding coaches, AJ Morris. So, welcome to the show, bud.
Oh, I appreciate the introduction. I appreciate you guys having me on. I love both of what you guys do, so it'll be definitely cool to have a chat. And as much as we work in different sectors of the industry, so to speak, and me and Tom, especially because me and Dan cross paths quite a lot, but
Yeah.
me and Tom don't often meet at shows. It's nice to touch base, and obviously top coaches in the industry talking about coaching. I think we'll be able to give some good value to the listeners.
I hope so. I hope so. I think that before obviously we started, we had a bit of a conversation. We were talking obviously just kind of like prep durations. We kind of just got into it, but AJ was just explaining 29 weeks worth of prep is sort of
29
the
weeks.
foregoing. So you're 20 weeks out at the moment. Is that where you're at?
Yeah, 19 weeks out actually this weekend.
Oh, great.
So
Okay.
yeah, it's like 28, 29 week prep. So yeah, I guess like just go into timelines a little bit for natural athletes. So, the main difference is that one, we have got less tools at our disposal to get the job done. So, when we're looking to lose body fat, we've only got an energy deficit. That's it. So, whereas when obviously you're assisted, you've got lipolytics to come on board, and you've also got the ability to, throughout an entire prep, run a higher rate of loss at less risk of losing muscle mass because you've got androgens in the mix as well, which can
Yeah.
hold muscle tissue.
Hmm.
So, with a natural, I think the main goal is the least invasive rate of loss to get the job done. So that will then incur higher training performance, more muscle mass retained, and ultimately the ability to do the most beneficial thing for a natural athlete at the end of a prep, which is eat up into your primary shows. So, when I'm looking at prep, for me, I'm not really 19 weeks out this weekend. I'm more like 17 because I really want like a nice window of time where I can pull off the gas pedal from a diet standpoint, pull off the gas pedal from a training standpoint in terms of like volume, intensity, all of these things, and just cruise into the show.
Yeah.
And that is the best peaking strategy that I ever get to use with naturals. It's just whether or not we get there or not. And with first time preps, you can never exactly pinpoint. Okay, we're gonna have 3 weeks to feed up into the primary show when you've never seen them in shape before. It's very difficult to do that. But yeah, like generally the timelines are just much longer because the rate of loss has to be much slower.
So what sort of rate of loss are you kind of looking at? So, well, to use myself, if we took me and said I was somehow a natural bodybuilder right now,
300 pounds, yeah.
295
Yeah.
this morning. What sort of, bear in mind, AJ, I used to compete probably, let's say, around 235, 240.
Okay.
That sort of 50 odd pound marker. Like, how long are you genuine? I mean, are you genuinely looking at a pound a week? And I'm going to diet for a year for like 50 weeks, or are we looking at 25 weeks, £2 a week sort of job? Like,
Yeah.
where would your head go for something like that?
Yeah, sure. So that's actually a really good sort of case study to use. So
I'm going to get it.
yeah, a £300 start point.
295 in relatively okay shape. I mean,
I think the key thing is with natural bodybuilders is they don't get that out of shape.
not
So, well,
now,
apart from some
they used
maybe,
to,
but
These days, people are
some of
smarter.
the better athletes these days tend to hold it much tighter.
It
So
depends.
AJ, go on then. In that scenario, where would it be? Like, I want to know this. This is good.
Yeah. I mean, like, so for example, like, another good sort of like heavy athlete is like, a Theo Golab, Theo Golab's like 190 on stage and he goes up to like 260 in the off season sometimes. I don't want him getting that heavy, but he takes himself there and he gets seriously strong by doing it. But anyway, like case study in point. So for you, let's say you got 50 to 60 pounds to lose or something to get into shape. So I would, for a natural athlete, again, I wouldn't do that all in one go. This is where this whole like pre-prep setup comes from, is because it's not just about like the amount of weight we have to lose, it's the exposure to being in a deficit. So like this whole prep, for example, for me, 28 weeks of dieting, I might be exposed to a deficit for 24 or something like that. because I'm going to use that window of time to feed up at the end of the prep. And I'm also going to use refeeds, which is time at maintenance. So they all add up. So it's maybe 24 weeks total dieting. For you, if you had to lose 50 or 60 all in one go and lose it at a sensible rate of loss, you're right, it'd be a whole year in a diet. So instead, you probably do it in like a 10 to 12 week pre-prep with a more assertive rate of loss, because you're coming from your fattest point, your heaviest point, your softest point. You've got the least likelihood of you losing muscle tissue in that phase. Maybe lose it like 1 to 1.5% of your body weight. So for you, that would be like 3 to 4 pounds a week potentially. Trim off a good, let's say, 20 pounds of the rate of loss. Go up in an 8-week period very gradually, maybe up like 3 to 5 pounds. So you don't really gain much, but you remove the diet fatigue over those 8 weeks after the pre-prep. And then you start the actual prep with maybe only 25 to lose, 30 to lose, a lesser percentage. And you can break that down into much smaller chunks.
See, that's interesting. So what I would do, I would definitely do something similar. So again, taking that example, this 295, 300 pound individual, obviously if they're assisted, even at the absolute bare minimum of assisted sort of TRT, maybe very low dosage growth hormone thing, no extra stuff, literally just testosterone replacement. What I would do is I'd probably run a very similar sort of thing, but it would kind of be more squished in. So it would be maybe like 6 weeks of sort of pre-dieting, 4 weeks or so of bringing everything back up to a stable point, and then I would start a diet of around about 12, 14, 16 weeks, depending on how much they kind of needed, and be, obviously, like you said, be super aggressive in that initial run, then have the break, and then go again. And I would probably, again, it gets more so squished based and down in time wise based on how much like they are actually using. Again, that's for a TRT sort of point. For a drug using sort of point, like real sort of proper cycles, 2 grams a week sort of thing, and lots of fat burners, lots of growth hormone, whatever. You condense that to a 4-week very aggressive speed run mini cut. You have 2, 3, 4 weeks sort of bring things back up. They'll probably just look amazing at that point. They'll just be really full and whatever, and really, in a good shape. And then you start a 12, 14 weeker, and then you bring them in.
I'd say I'd probably somewhere between the two of them. But I think from the experience, because I do obviously the assisted and the natural athletes, I tend to have the experience of the longer preps and the shorter preps. And most of my assisted athletes end up being at kind of in the middle, where it's like we'll do the pre-prep, but they're probably a bit longer, a bit less aggressive, and I think I probably use a bit less PEDs and stuff anyway, in terms of like obviously clenbuterol and T3 and all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely funny. I think one thing, AJ, one thing that I would probably ask you as well. Do you find that your clients, for some of them, when you tell them like, oh yeah, your prep's going to be like 25 weeks, like 26 weeks, do they kind of get that like, are you fucking joking thing, or are they like, yeah, but this guy at the gym does it in 16 weeks, and you go, yeah, this guy at the gym's on trend, mate. So
I think luckily enough, like the amount of kind of like well-spread knowledge that we have within the natural community now is pretty decent. So people kind of expect that that's what we're working with is 25 to 28 week contest preps. And for a newbie, like someone that's not been exposed to chatting to natural athletes or listen to a good bit of podcasts or something like that, they might be a little bit like, fucking hell, that's a long time in a diet.
It is, yeah. I think the thing is, I find that, especially with younger guys, they just get so sick of that sort of deficit, and that's sick of being, that thing. Unless they are, because they're one of two ways, aren't they? They're either slipping up, fucking it every 5 minutes and finding it super difficult, or they're like, bodybuilding is all I eat, sleep, and live on. Like, there is no in between, is there? Really?
Yeah, I agree with that. There's definitely no real middle ground between those two kind of personality traits. But this is where, especially if I'm working with a teen or a junior now, I work with less than I did when I started, because my niche was basically all teens and juniors when I started coaching. But now I work with less, but I'm big on trying to make sure that I build a relationship and also understand how like emotionally mature they are before I put them into a prep. So, like the recent team that I prepped last year, Matt Egerton, like I really learned him as a guy before I said, okay, like let's pull the plug on this. Let's go for the prep. Because I knew like, okay, his ability to adhere to diet, to stick to everything that I'm going to tell him to do is perfect. He's not going to fuck it up. Basically, he's also like with the younger guys, you got to think it's like this, if their first prep is like really rough, and they get to the end of it, they're not going to want to bodybuild again. You know,
Yeah,
they're not even going to want to go
that's
to.
very true.
I really feel as a coach, you sometimes I feel like I don't know if you feel this way as well, Dan. You feel like you have a lot of influence on what's going to happen with them for the remainder of their career.
Yes.
Because if you make, because how many times do we see some crazily good bodybuilder have a very bad run with a very dodgy or very misinformed coach, have a very bad run into a show, do terrible even though they could have done great
Yeah.
because they looked so bad, and then go, that was a waste of my fucking time. What am I doing? And then just bin the whole thing off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
I
first
see it.
couple of years kind of coaching people was primarily juniors and teens, and I definitely felt like that was something I noticed a lot
Yeah.
was, how that first prep goes very much dictates whether they're going to continue bodybuilding or not. So some people that I might have prepped maybe never bodybuilded again afterwards if they had a difficult prep. And then obviously the ones that had successful ones that were probably better well managed went on to continue loving bodybuilding. And that's where you've got to be really kind of careful when people come to you in the wrong position and being able to say kind of like, no, I don't really want to prep you from this point. Because I've had people come to me where they've been like, 10 weeks out from a show they want to do at 40 pounds above stage weight. And it's like, that this is going to suck for you. I really don't want to like ruin your love for bodybuilding because you're asking me to do this.
You're right, and I think the more susceptible people to that specific sort of like happening, that thing that happens to them, that mannerism, whatever that trait, and that experience, I suppose, is female competitors and young competitors, like male or female competitors, because I feel like there's just psychological traits that haven't. If you get a 40-year-old dude who's been bodybuilding for years and decides that he's finally going to compete, he's probably had experiences within his life and experiences within his time that have been quite rough, and he's had to really soldier his way through. You give him 16 weeks of dieting into a bodybuilding show, he'll get to week 4, and you might finally hear, mate, this is quite tough. Yeah, you
Yeah.
might finally hear that, you know what I mean? And then he'll do the show and do as well as they do. But I feel like if you get a young lad who's never, they've got a basic standard job where they earn a bit of money, whatever, they've never had any of these really, really rough life experiences. You put them in a bodybuilding prep, they go, "No, I just want to go out and eat pizza with my mates. I want to take this girl to the cinema. I want to go do this party. I want to go and be big and bulky and strong again. I want my mates in the gym to look at me and go, whoa, you're fucking massive, you are, mate." Like, but you know what I mean? And they don't have that like ability to like rationalize it and go, this is literally just for a period of time in my life, and that's okay. Like, it's quite hard to rationalize, isn't it, for blokes?
Yeah, definitely. It's just that it's the environmental thing and it's the emotional maturity. If they're in a good environment and maybe life for them in teenage or junior years is bodybuilding, then maybe a prep is good. But also then at the same time, if they are that kind of bodybuilder wired person, it's important to post prep encourage the importance of actually having some normality in life as well,
Yeah.
because they're the type of people that will do a post show and you'll tell them it's okay to go out and have a meal and they will go back to their car and eat chicken and broccoli. And
There's a chap who I've got who is funny enough. I did his check-in this morning, AJ. It's just hilarious. And I said, buddy, I said, you're in an off season, you've just dieted, you're in phenomenal condition, you've still got lines at the base of your glutes.
Yeah.
We're trying to push up in body weight very much so now. You're gaining 2 pounds a week on average. That's great. But honestly, you can get away with having a free meal once a week. It's not going to be a problem. And he was like, oh, yeah, we didn't have anything on Christmas Day. On Christmas Day, he didn't bother. He was like, I don't really want to. Like, my family don't really care. And I was like, all right. But then I said, could you just honestly, just take a friend out, go out for food, whatever, with a girlfriend, a friend, whatever. Just go. Absolutely. He had fucking cream of wheat with some whey, some fruit, and then some like 3 slices of bread. And I was like, babe, I was like, bro, I was like, go and eat fucking burger, please.
Yeah. I've had that experience with a few clients that are just like they're almost so dedicated it's to their detriment to the point where they're not pushing up enough, they're not dropping fatigue post show quick enough because they're being so regimented. The guy I coached to second place at Worlds in Masters post show, I told him like we need to get some food in you, and he went and got salmon and salad. I was like, bear in mind, this guy was probably the heaviest guy in the whole show, and like skinned, like he was like 195 pounds or 200 pounds on stage, like skinless, no there just was no fat on him, and he went and did that. I was like, oh God, this is going to be a tough post show.
You know, weird pressure. Yeah, you're not going to be there pulling back the reins, being like, "Stop!" Like you're going to be like, "Go, go."
No, I call him up every week, and I'm like, bro, go get that meal down. Like,
Right. That's good. That's good. So, how many have you got competing this year, AJ? How many clients have you got?
I'm 34.
That's cool. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Awesome. That'd be cool. That'd be cool. I think I have around about. I think I have around about the same. Hopefully, yeah. I'll know more towards kind of like the next couple of weeks. I would have thought like everyone starts to really lock it in.
Of course.
But I think I've got six IFBB pros this year, which is cool. So
Wow.
it should be good fun. Yeah, should be a good one. That should
That's
be. Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, I got Kira, I've got Jack, I've got Sarah, I've got Shelley, I've got Reese, and then I've got a guy called Cleef from the States, he's a classic guy,
Yeah,
whose off season would make you both laugh so much. It's unbelievable. He's just so unbelievably lazy off season. It's just hilarious. But
oh God.
yeah. He was like, "Yeah, I only need about 8 weeks to get ready," and I was like, "What?" He was like, "Yeah, just 8 weeks, maybe 7 or 6 if I'm really in good shape." I'm like, "Oh, shut up, man." And then he's like 260, and he comes down to like his classic stage weight with like striated glutes and everything, and it takes him like 8 weeks, and he has like a cheat meal
Some
like once a
people
week.
that
He
just
does
have the
like
most blessed genetics,
he goes
don't
from
they?
eating like 4 or 5 meals a day to like 6 meals a day, and then he like starts taking some fat burners, does a little bit of cardio, has a cheat meal once a week, and he's in stage lean in 8 weeks. So it's just like, all right, cool.
Well,
Yeah, cool. Just make us
I
all look
wish it
like
was that
terrible
easy.
retards. Yeah. We're
that's
clearly
not.
doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So, AJ, do you feel like there is a lot that people could learn in terms of like the assisted region of coaching? Do you feel like those coaches could learn a lot from natural bodybuilding coaches, or what sort of things do you think they could learn from?
I think in a way, yes. I mean, as much as there's definitely differences, I think that there's a lot of like fundamentals that if you learn them from coaching natural athletes, you can definitely cross transfer them to assisted. I
Yeah,
think, the problem maybe arises when people jump straight into prep coaching and they go down the assisted route, and yeah, maybe they've got an idea of the like pharmacological side of bodybuilding, but they haven't maybe understood the basics of
yeah,
like timelines, creating a deficit, how to program nutrition, how to program training, and also how to actually coach and understand individuals. Like the best way you can coach is have great communication skills. So if you build those up in I probably say a lower risk environment, coaching natural athletes, that'll then cross transfer into having a lot of like deliverable coaching values to all of your assisted athletes. I think it's a quite a nice natural jump, but at the same time, if you're coming from an athlete background of being assisted and you've had several good coaches
yeah.
before, then hopping into assisted competitors might be a nice sort of like very easy to understand transition between those two things. So my answer is like yes and no, basically. Yeah.
I definitely feel like there's a lot of the fundamentals that are more nailed in the natural bodybuilding side of things, because
Yeah.
I think there's less variables, obviously, in natural bodybuilding to play with. So the top natural bodybuilding coaches fixate on nailing those variables that they have to manage, which is just a smaller number. Things
Yes.
like nutrition, things like timeline, fatigue management. And I definitely feel like there's a big gap of that in the assisted realm of coaching, because you can band-aid over it sometimes with drug usage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you can. Of
It's
course you can. Of course you can. Of course you
it's
can.
it's almost like akin to, I don't know, stepping into a Formula One car when you haven't, raced something super slow, and like,
Yeah,
it's like you're going up to a pace in which things can happen very fucking fast.
yeah,
If you haven't learned how to, take a corner properly or brake at the right time, then you're gonna fuck shit up.
yeah.
So, I think
That's
that's kind
very
of a
good.
nice.
That's a good analogy. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I like Formula One, so.
Oh, yeah,
But
me too.
yeah, I think doing things at a pace where things happen slower and you can make mistakes and them not be, well, to be fair, you can still make mistakes and them be costly health wise. In fact, a lot of the mistakes that some natural coaches maybe make are actually long term maybe even more costly than some of the assisted coaches. But we can argue that all day. Like natural bodybuilding, especially the extremities and stage condition, it's really not a healthy endeavor. So you do need to know how to do that well and exit people well from that post-show state.
See, that's a really good topic, Age, actually. Chief. So something I just want to touch on a little bit more. It's an interesting one. You mentioned it. Do you feel as if now this is going to sound stupid to some people, but like listening, especially people who are relatively new to bodybuilding, I suppose, or somewhere in the relative new stage, do you feel naturally competing is healthier than non untested?
Okay.
In let's say that obviously untested there is massively far more unhealthy. Obviously, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that a moderate and a conservative and a safe and a lower sort of point, do you feel like they're relatively even? Because how many times have we seen a natural competitor, you yourself, I remember this because I don't really forget much about bodybuilding, you came out of a show 42-week prep but when you was a junior,
Yeah,
was
yeah,
it?
yeah,
Was that
yeah,
right? Something like that, right? And you came out and your hormones were totally bottomed for like 6 months.
yeah, yeah,
You
for
I
sure.
remember you telling me about this before. So do you feel as if something like that can happen, or was there a way that you, if you'd gone back now, could have fixed that issue for you as a natural? And then against, say, okay, so one of my guys, if they finish a prep, they've done whatever they've done on prep, and they come out and they go straight to a TRT, they straight to blood work, straight to every train by JP or strong health supplement you can fucking find and shit down the throats, glutathione drips, all that bullshit, all that whatever, and getting everything lined up and slowly bringing food up to that point where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Do you feel as if that is safer than less safe than the natural side? I'm not saying one's better or the other. I'm just kind of getting your thoughts on it.
Sure. I think really what underpins the whole conversation is like the massive sort of inter-individuality of how people respond to each thing. So for example, one natural guy could have like a really sort of low body fat set point. So his homeostasis, for example, is 5 pound above stage weight and he feels good and he has good sleep. It's the same thing with the ability to tolerate drugs, like some of the top guys have such a good response to androgen use that then they grow really efficiently off very, very low dose. And then another guy has to push things super high. So it's like, I think the individual tolerance plays a role because some people, like you look at what they have to do to get into shape and you're like, fuck, like your physiological state is not built for bodybuilding,
It's and drugs can plaster that and cover it up and get you to the finish line. They bloody well can do it. But it isn't pretty at the end. But whereas with a natural competitor, I suppose you just you just the things that they have to do.
You just embrace the suck.
but they do. But they also, if you have a lady who has to go down as a natural female bikini competitor down to 700 calories a day, and she's doing that for multiple weeks on end, and she's doing hours of cardio, insane step count. She's just gutting herself. Like, at what point do you just go, okay, hang on, 1,200 calories, less cardio, and 25 mcg of T3 may have been safer at this point than what we're doing. It's a weird one, isn't it? It's a weird one.
I think that's a fair comparison. Like I'd use the lower level muscularity classes, and especially the female classes, and especially the lighter females, the bikini girls. I'd use them as kind of a primary example of perhaps where it is healthier to have some degree of lipolytics and potentially some androgen use to make the process so much smoother, especially the exit, the post show phase, because it can take small females, especially if they've been dug hard into glute ham separation style conditioning for a natural. That's very tough to get unless you're genetically very blessed in those body parts or have a low body fat set point. It can take them 6 to 9 months potentially to recover and get into a good spot to grow again, and it just elongates every single timeline.
However, I would say this, AJ, and I'm sure Dan will agree with me on this point, and I'm assuming you will as well. For a non-competitive bodybuilder, naturally bodybuilding is far, far, far better.
100%. Yeah,
100%.
Also longevity for sure.
All day. And if I was to go back and try a new life and try a new bodybuilding direction, I think I would probably have lent more into something like that. And
I said the same. I said the same. I wish I started in
and then if I decided to compete, I would have used drugs specifically for that show for a cycle, and then I would never have taken them ever again after that.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's how I would have looked at it, because now I'm very much in the guts of it all, and I can't really get out the belly of the beast. But Yeah, I think naturally bodybuilding, and I think just in general, and just staying and dieting for a fucking holiday for 8 to 10 weeks to just look a little bit better. I
Yeah,
think that's perfectly sound. You're not getting anywhere disastrous with conditioning. You'll look great on the beach. You'll look nice. You'll look in shape. You'll look a bit like a swimmer, but whatever. And then
yeah.
being outside of the competing, it's far better. Whereas competitive bodybuilding, whichever way you fucking swing it, is going to be deleterious in some regard. I think.
Yes, yeah.
Do we feel like competitive condition in bodybuilding is starting to go a bit too far at the moment,
Or
considering that particularly in like UK and Europe, where like even first timers shows at this point are just stripped out to the glutes, everything. Does that to the point make bodybuilding less appealing to the public, less kind of healthy and achievable for most people? Is it too far now?
My opinion is that it's never going to be a sport that is for everyone. And I think the standards. Oh shit! I think the standards nowadays.
Where's
It's sorry, it's my camera. It just dies and then comes back.
That's what 28 weeks of prep does to you. Just disappears.
It just disappear. So yeah, I think the standards now, I think they're really cool to see personally. I think that if you want to win a show, you now have to work your absolute arse off, quite literally, to win it. It was very rare to see like a amateur natural bodybuilding level. You'd maybe see 2 or 3 guys in the show, perhaps 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that had like dugout hams and glutes. And now you'll maybe see a novice lineup, and like 3 or 4 of them in the novices will have dugout hams and glutes. And I just think that's super
and
cool.
the two at the end will have boxed off glutes instead of just fully
Exactly.
That still looks really good. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
it's interesting you say that, because if you go to a PCA first timers show, let's say it's a relatively large lineup, you'll have, let's say you've got 16 guys in a PCA first timers class, because I've seen it before, and you'll have maybe 8 of them which won't really be anywhere near the level that they kind of needed to get to. They'll be big, they'll be full, they'll be round, they'll have good kind of muscularity, in most places, but they won't be as fully dialed as they need to, because they just couldn't hack the dieting process. Whereas you'll have the top 8 who will be skinned to ribbons, and they'll be absolutely. They'll just be there, and you're looking at them going, me like, that's a first fucking timer. Back in the days of NABA in 2000 and when did I compete? 2012. First timers. There was only 3 who were in a class of 20. The NABA Midlands, 3 in proper detailed conditioning. The rest of them were just nowhere near. No.
Yeah.
It's insane. The level of progression over the years has. Yes, there's still guys that just don't really know how hard they have to push and think stepping on stage with a soggy arse is okay. But then there's guys that they really take it seriously from day dot, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, in natural bodybuilding, I think it's even more so, because even in teens, which is obviously the under 19s category, those shows, like, people are peeled. Everybody's peeled. Like, the whole first call out is skinless in most natural shows. And particularly, I think that's because there's less of them. There's less natural shows, so you don't have any like with the PCA. Sometimes you have a show that's just like, it's just awful. Like, there's no standard there. I don't think we have any of those in natural bodybuilding.
Yeah, agreed. There's less. There's going to be more and more creeping up now, though, because like everyone wants to be involved in natural bodybuilding now as promoters, which is cool.
We've seen that.
I think that's a really cool thing to touch on that, and that's a great thing. But
how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the whole sort of PCA doing like a natural sort of thing? Like, do you think it's a really good thing? Or?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's an amazing thing. I think it's an amazing thing. I think that for me,
is that a tactical not here, mate?
no,
Are
like.
you going to do a natural show with PCA?
I don't know at the moment, because I don't really know whether they fit my year perfectly. I've got a client doing one of the first ones, and I need to decide whether I want to do a show that my client's doing, because I kind of want to do this. I want to do shows where I can just kind of primarily focus on myself, and also because I'm very invested in, just like you guys, I'm so invested in being there for my athlete that I'll put myself quite a clear second, and I don't want to do that. But anyway, that's that. So PCA doing shows, I think it's amazing, because their promotion, their show standards, their lighting, their photography, their media is immense. They've worked hard for that, and they've put together amazing shows, and they've got prestige to the point where they can run their first lot of natural shows, and naturals are immediately like, yeah, I want to do it. Why? Because they've got trust and integrity and like respect. The one thing that I just hope, and I really try and drive my clients towards, is that, you know, whilst that is there, and they should definitely do it if it fits in their timeline, don't forget to support the people that have only ever done natural bodybuilding for the last like couple of
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah,
it
get a few
is,
shows in, don't just put one show in.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like,
So as long as we still, and I'm not saying like we support true natural bodybuilding, because they're all true natural bodybuilding if they're drug tested,
yeah.
which is
Yeah.
cool. But I think, supporting the feds that have had it as their only thing, and that will be their only thing, is important, because that, in my opinion, is kind of the prestige and the heart of natural bodybuilding, is the ones that have just run natural shows only.
I think they've contributed immensely to growing the popularity of not natural bodybuilding as well. Like, PCA probably wouldn't be doing natural bodybuilding if it wasn't for these other federations. Like,
Yeah.
people are hopping on it now because it's becoming more popular, because the standards are raising, and
Yeah.
people are seeing that you can actually achieve an amazing physique naturally, when people
Yeah.
previously didn't really think that. And that kind of comes down to people sticking with natural bodybuilding through the rough patches where it wasn't popular, and they've grown it from that. So yeah, I do agree that we do need to support the people that have kind of stuck through that period and made it popular.
Yeah. And
AJ, is NPA still a thing?
not really.
Okay. Okay. That's
So
when I first got into bodybuilding. I was actually thinking of going into one of those before I got on stuff. Yeah, years ago.
yeah, it
It's
was
funny.
one of the biggest federations in the UK at one point, and I worked at a few shows backstage and stuff like that when they had the finals in Brighton in, like, I think 2015. I worked backstage. So yeah, Michael Phillips, who used to run the MPA, he was a great guy, and like he was always very supportive of what I was doing. But yeah, it got passed down. I believe her name is Julia that runs it now, and there's still shows, but they have to cancel a few of them because there's such low numbers.
The
I have
standards
one
have
of them
dropped a
that's
lot.
literally right up the road from me in Penistone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a shame. That's a shame.
yeah.
Oh dear. What questions have we got, Danny boy?
Well, I do want to know more about the MBW show that
Oh,
you're
sure.
going to be hosting. I feel like it's a good opportunity to talk on it, because you've announced that that's going to be a thing, and I think that's going to be a big natural show, because it's obviously going to be an expo as well, which probably is that the
What's
first
that?
kind?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's the
In
first
life.
time. I mean, the expo in itself will be sort of similar to like what, PCA run at their finals, where it's like kind of joined on to where all the
Yeah.
auditorium seating areas, because it's a huge arena that we're running in. But yeah, like, the show in itself is, as a byproduct of an opportunity that came about. We were already sponsoring shows quite heavily with MBW as a brand, putting a lot of money into natural bodybuilding each year, and we kind of came to the conclusion that instead of just sponsoring, we wanted to have our own event. And obviously the UK FBA were kind of like happy to support that. And that is what it's now become, because I believe that there is definitely an opportunity to bring together a whole bunch of athletes from all around the globe to compete in the UK, because people love the UK, people love coming here. We have people from all different nationalities, especially naturals, come into Rotherham pretty much every other week, especially at this time of the year. And I'm like, why
This
wouldn't
is
why wouldn't we
a
bring them?
natural side and a natural show and an expo.
Yes, yes, yes.
Do you get drug test on the door, or can I come in? Like,
You actually get polygraphed at the door, mate. And now anyone can attend, of course. And for any of your athletes that are, of course, drug free, I'd love to have them there. For like
Let me just find them. Carry on. I mean,
So
carry on.
for UK athletes, the way that it works is basically it's kind of like the normal transition. So you do like the UK championships with the UK FBA, and then you can immediately go towards the international show. And then for anyone that's abroad, you could literally just come and do it as a virtue of, it could be your first show of the season. You don't have to do any other shows. You don't have to also be affiliated with any specific fed. So you don't have to be like with like the WNBF or with MBFI or with anything, you can just come across this. It's an open event, and that's the same. That's the same with pros. So if you have any recognized natural pro card, will
Which ones would those be? Which natural pro sort of statuses would that be?
like you can have any natural pro card to come and compete in the pro show. It's open. It's an open pro show. So they've started doing this already in Austria with the AMBF. It's called the AMBF Elite Pro. Basically, where you apply, you're a pro already in a federation. There's way too many federations, way too many. And then when you run pro shows for just one federation, you get 4 pros. You know,
Yeah.
but what we want is, I mean, already off just base of interest, already have 12 men's open pros lined up.
Oh, that's cool, man. That's
So-
cool.
Might add one into that mix.
Boom, there we go. Like there's another one. So
Do you know what? That's really interesting. I think that's a great idea because when people watch pro shows, they want to see elite athletes. They want to see the best against the best. You know, you want to see like Clash of Titans type thing. You don't want to be going to a show where you've got a couple of people in there and it's not really a competition.
yes, yeah, and then that opens the door up to, you know, funding more prize money, more even better media production. But you know, for first year, we're throwing a lot at it, especially from a media standpoint. So you know, like running super high quality free live stream on YouTube, getting people to come. We've got some guys from Austria that are the best in terms of stage production, the best in terms of like media packages. That we're just throwing everything at it to make it a super high quality experience for the athletes. You know, because I think some of the problems that have occurred with maybe some shows not giving enough back to the athletes is that the promotion has come from a space of trying to either make money or they've been so disattached from being an athlete that they don't understand what people want now. You know, whereas
I agree with that.
the whole like MBW team, like all of us, we're all athletes. We all understand what we want nowadays. And that's what I'm trying to make sure is that everyone leaves thinking, regardless of where they place, won, lost, whatever, they're getting a shit hot weekend out of it. You know, that's the objective.
I think that's really cool. AJ, obviously with you being a very successful young coach in the industry, what do you think, what was the advice you would give to young up and coming coaches, people that are starting new in the industry, things that you think are probably neglected when trying to become a successful coach? Because I think when it comes to like people your age, I don't think there's actually a better coach worldwide at your age group.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. I'm getting older now. I'm 29 this year, so
I
I'm
know
definitely.
you've been kind of nailing it since like early mid-20s, you
I
know.
appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, honestly, like the best thing for a coach is getting your hands dirty and getting experience, you know, and not being afraid to make mistakes. You know, I think that's where a lot of people, especially nowadays, are of course very conscious of their image, very
Yeah.
careful as to, you know, documenting anything that went wrong. But like making mistakes is a vital part of learning lessons and being able to basically correct them in the future. So I think a lot of my biggest lessons as a coach have come from making, you know, errors, whether that be with the prep strategy, the peak, whatever. And then making sure that it just never happens again by actually being critical of myself. So reviewing at the end of every prep, I pretty much sit down with either the athlete or I just do it in a Loom video or whatever. And I'll like critically review the whole process. What could we have done better? What could I have done better? What could they have done better? So that then if we're moving into another prep either the next year or whatever, 2 years time, 3 years time, then we fix all of those mistakes. You know, like Ben Lloyd's a great example. I didn't work with him in his last prep, but we sat down and he ran me through all of the things that he thought could have been done better in the last prep. And I mapped out a timeline to avoid all of those mistakes.
Yeah.
And we still learned lessons this prep, but we massively avoided some of the problems that he'd met last time. So, you know, I think that's the big thing as a coach. And then also, like I said this in the recent YouTube video that I did, but you know, just don't be afraid to ask and immerse yourself in the industry in itself. You know, especially when I was growing as a coach, you've done a great job with this, Dan, especially like I used to go on every single WMBF Worlds trip. I think I've been to WMBF Worlds since like 2017, every year, apart from COVID when I missed it, like every year, because I just go and I just ask athletes questions, I ask coaches questions. Sometimes you get some answers being like, what the fuck? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
But then you'll learn something from it. You'll learn that, like maybe someone could be doing something better at a higher level and like there's an opportunity to help those people, or whether, someone's doing something you haven't heard about before that could work really well.
I
Just
think that's a really good point, Andrew. That's a really, no, like for, what you said, for someone to actually grow their knowledge and stuff is to genuinely just ask those questions. It's just to ask and find out and pay attention to it as well. Remember it, and
Yeah.
you then utilize it down the line. There's the amount of times when, like as a young, how old do you know? Age? You're 29, did you say?
I'm 29 this year. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 31 on Saturday, so there's not
Oh,
really
happy
a couple of
birthday.
years. Oh, cheers, bud. But I think we were very much like junior sort of bodybuilders at the same sort of time, weren't we?
Yeah.
You're obviously, I was kind of just coming out of it, but I think our coach. When did you start coaching? Like properly,
2014, like late 2014, early 2015 were my first
Okay,
few
yeah,
like
mine
proper
was a little
clients.
bit later. I was more like 16-ish, 17-ish, and then it just absolutely exploded. But I think most of the time I spent before that was just obviously learning about bodybuilding for myself and get me better, and talking to every single champion that I could. So speaking to Dave Titterton at a show, speaking to Elliot Page when he did a junior class and stuff, speaking to all sorts of people. Like one of the funny ones you mentioned that you listen to a bodybuilder and you go, "What the fuck? That doesn't make any sense." Is listening to Rushane. Rushane, the PCA bodybuilder, the guy who's now a judge. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like when I heard he was like, "Yeah, well, short preps are the best because you just bring your food down, and then there's not really much chance to lose muscle because you're not in a deficit for too long." I'm like, "What?" But then, do you know what that does? That
Logic.
clicks the button in your head, and it makes you go, "Well, hang on a minute. He can do that because he is so unbelievably genetically blessed."
Yeah.
If you gave him a 16-week prep, he'd go, "I can't do 16 weeks of dieting." But if you give him an 8-week prep, he'll go, "Yeah, I could do that."
Yeah,
So
exactly.
then all that taught me was, well, with guys who are genetically blessed like that, don't make them do more than they have to because they've never done much to get to where they are. They've
Yes.
not tried hard on the grand scheme of things. They just have genetics that allow them to get there with a relatively normal amount of effort.
Yeah.
And then they perceive that, dogging Shane, he's a lovely guy. But I'm saying what they perceive as really like, oh, I worked hard for this. It's not like 28 weeks of prep. For me, it is mind-blowingly difficult. 16, but right. So that's what I perceive as like difficult. Whereas he perceives 8 weeks of prep as like solid. And it's like, it's different scales, isn't it? So
yeah, definitely.
So what do you think, Tom, like would be your advice for young coaches that are trying to make it in this industry these days? What would be the main things you'd advise?
No, yeah, it's cool. So the first thing that I'd suggest is this is going to sound so crap. It's going to so harsh. Are you sure? Like, are you sure you want to do this? Because it's really saturated and you're going into a massively uphill struggle. And the only person I have seen, apart from maybe yourself, Dan, in recent years of someone who has shone through a pack and just climbed through the shit was, Tim, who works with Christian.
Oh yes, he's
He's
really
the
good.
only person I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years who's just ripped their way through and gone, "I'm at the fucking top with all of you lot." I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure, yeah, you stay here and get these." Like, that's cool.
It's so true though.
So, isn't it? I'm not afraid to say that. I'm to people going, "I'm going to go at me," but he is the only person I've seen, and it's because it's so fucking hard to get through, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you're going to do it, firstly, right, cool. Find a niche and find something that's different about you to everyone else. Okay. Then look at understanding social media, understanding business as well. And but before all of that, actually, to be fair, before you do all of that, make sure that you love what you're doing and you love helping people. So you have to love to help people. If you're just doing it for the money, you're never going to be a top coach. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Never. No chance. If you're doing it for a business sort of thing or whatever, it will work for a period of time until it burns and fizzles out. But you need to find things that are very different about you and very obscure about you, perhaps, or just I suppose with AJ, which is very likable, right? Like in the natural community, AJ, you are, you're a known person. No natural bodybuilder doesn't really know who you are. Well, I'm not bigging you up in a sort of braggy way. I'm just saying, like, that's just a piece of factual information for you, right?
Mm.
And if you're not at that stage in status, then maybe, coaching would have been much harder for you, wouldn't it, to get to the client thing, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
there's a multitude of factors, but ultimately, don't do it unless you want to help people for just helping people. I mean, fuck me, AJ, how much did you charge when you first started coaching? This is a weird question, but when you first started, how much did you charge? Because I'll tell you exactly how much I charged.
I know what I
Between £3 and £50 a month.
Yeah.
I was
So
going to say.
I was 50 quid a month until I got 10 clients. Then I was £75 a month.
Yeah.
And then I was
I did the same.
£100 a month after that. And then when I worked my way up and realized that I was making a living from it, and I was like, okay, I actually have to make a lot more money now. I was charging £150 a month.
Yeah.
And I was charging £150 a month for years.
Yeah,
And
same.
over a year or so. And then obviously now I charge 300 a month, but that's because I'm just so busy. Like,
I think that's it though. Like you realize, but that's the good thing because that the amount of time that we both spent at, like, let's say 100 or £150 a month,
yeah.
just shows that we were so passionate about just making it work as opposed to making a load of money.
Exactly.
At that point we probably could have gone to like 250, 300, whatever. But because that was maybe where the industry standard was heading, but I was comfortable staying there for a while just to get a shit ton of results, and just because I
AJ, this is why you're now where you're at, and the same reason I'm now where I'm at with however many pro cards I've got and all IFBB and all that shit, right? And the British wins and all that bollocks, is because I enjoy it. I want to help these individuals.
Yeah.
And yes, from a business point, I can't carry on charging 150 because I wouldn't be able to pay my fucking mortgage, and my son would be eating bread and apples. But because tax is a dirty bastard. But you have to look at it from a point of like you wanted to make it work, and that's a really good way of phrasing it. Is like, how much? I bet. Listen, there's another question. Same as well. Like for you, Dan, probably. How many times have you gone well over and above the amount of money that that person was paying you?
All the time.
That amount of work,
All the time.
and then you work out the amount of hours you spent on that person, and it works out to just like almost inconsequential amount of money per month.
Yeah,
Yeah, the amount of times that I've coached people at a loss, like for prep clients, it happens quite frequently. But I think what you said about Tim about like breaking through, like, do you want it enough? That's what you have to do. If you want to break it through in an industry where everybody's a coach, every bodybuilder is a coach now. If you want to break past that and actually make it, you need to spend beyond, on being there for the athletes. You need to separate yourself from the pack, and the only way you can do that is doing things other people just aren't willing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my bodybuilding, even when I was taking it more seriously, it would still come second to a client's needs. And if I was at a competition, weekend, 2 shows back to back or whatever, there would be times where I'd be eating 2 meals or 3 meals that entire weekend and not really getting a ton of sleep because I was worrying about them. Granted, that's my own problem, but you're up at 5 because the client's up at 5.
Exactly.
Not because I wanted to wake up at 5. I was happy to get up at 7. But you're doing these things for them, and the hours and the time that you're spending on them. It's like even now, like like with Jack Eagles, obviously, right?
Oh.
So the amount of time that I'll spend working with him towards the back end of his prep, and Sarah, any of my other pros, for something that is so unbelievably important, like a chance to go to the Olympia, I will spend, if I have to, fucking hell, I'll do a call with him for 35 minutes, 40 minutes every evening, so we can just work out what's going on with his body and what the next day's plans are based on, everything. I'll do whatever it needs to be done to get to that. And and that's what you said, like, it doesn't matter how you like kind of run your business unless you like actually give a shit. You ain't going anywhere as a coach, really. The new coach.
Exactly.
I think it also helps you refine your skill set because once you know what you're doing, coaching people online from different countries and just off of pictures alone can be doable. But I think there's a lot of merit to being in person, being at all the shows, being there the day before, going through the peaking process, watching their body change each hour. I think that's definitely helped me refine my craft at least.
Yeah, definitely. I think just being there so other people can see how much you care as well. The amount of clients I've picked
100%.
up from people that didn't have their coach with them, and then they saw me backstage every 5 minutes with another client that ended up winning. And then at the end of the day, with all the maybe 4 or 5 clients that have got first or second place trophies, it's like then you're gonna get home. You're gonna get, like, I remember the WNBF UAE show. I took a picture with Kez and Dante. The next morning, I woke up to like 9 inquiries, all from the UAE, just because of
Wow.
that one picture. So it's like, and that then therefore the amount of like actual income that I gained from onboarding a few of those clients that did actually go forwards almost started to pay off the fact that I spent a lot of money to get out there and support them for 3 days.
That's
You know,
exactly
so
about like the reason I'm always at Worlds and I'm always at every client show the day before and stuff.
yeah,
Is it's not necessarily that it's profitable when you're doing it, but the results that you get out of it and the fact that people see how passionate you are about the sport
mm,
translates into more leads, into more clients
You have to,
joining.
yeah, you have to spend money to make the money, don't you? As well, you have to spend that money, but and spend that time and spend that effort more than anything. Really, it's really the best. Not so much money; it's more so effort to
yeah,
do it, isn't it? As well?
yeah.
Right, I've got one more question for AJ because we are nearing the hour.
Okay, one more question. I'd say what would be what makes a great client in terms of a bodybuilder?
So for me, I think it's just the ability to deliver good communication, So being timely, number one. I mean, that's the most simple of communication is actually checking in on time and delivering what I need. But also being able to like actually portray that information in the right way, which takes time and takes skill. But that's what I try to especially help the clients with that don't really have good communication skills that write on a check-in tab, good, 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 good.
Okay.
I'm like, mate,
Yeah,
Fine.
what?
Just like I'll just look at your picture and your voice note, and I'll like,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm like, the good needs to be expanded into something a little bit more substantial than good.
But
Um,
I also find that there's a happy medium, isn't there? I need
yes,
something
there
to say,
is.
but I don't need you to reel off also like a load of bullshit to me. Like
oh,
like if you're
100%.
clear and concise and you give me an update, what I've actually started doing for a few people is saying, leave the check-in sheet, send me your photos, and send me a 2.5 minute voice note. I'll listen to how your week's gone, and then I'll get back to you from that. Because people are far more comfortable just quickly holding up the phone and doing this than they are about writing out a bunch of stuff. So let's make it easier for.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think, probably 75% of my clients communicate via voice note or Loom video for their check-ins. And that's just because I like the audio response. And obviously I always do a video or audio response because I feel like I can portray my point of view a lot better with audio or visual. It's like little things like tone of voice as well that you can hear from a client that just gives you that much more information.
100%.
So yeah, I 100% agree with that. But it can go two ways as well, like you can end up receiving a fucking 15-minute voice note, which is basically them repeating the same thing about a million times.
Just delete, say it didn't come through. Do you want to try
That's where the 2 times button
I
becomes
haven't
very
tried that.
handy.
delete and then screenshot and go, did you send me something? Just try again. Just keep, if it's a voice note, keep it to 2 minutes.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, what I do as a coach is I really like Tom says, set boundaries for your clients. So say, if you're going to voice note if you check in, keep it this length, don't go over that length and then they have an understanding of what they need to produce for you. But I mean, ultimately, outside of communication, it's like, it's just the ability to work, it's the ability to get the job done. And in and amongst that work ethic, it's also the ability to enjoy it and have fun and have the right mindset to apply to the right phase, which again just takes time and skill. But it's like you can go two ways with it. You can apply a ridiculous amount of work ethic and focus to a prep and be overkill from the start, and especially with the lengths of preps that we do, if you're the hood up, world out mentality from 25 weeks out, by the time you get to 10 weeks out, you're mashed because you've put so much ridiculous focus and overkill into the process that then you're not enjoying it anymore. So
Well, when it wasn't necessary.
yes, exactly. You need to have the right mindset, the right time. It's like the intensity of your mindset probably needs to just gradually go up as the prep goes on
Yeah,
as you get closer to
100%.
the show, as opposed to being right at 100% at the start.
Yeah, don't need to be like putting on the David Goggins whilst you're about to do 10 minutes on the treadmill. But
When I see
cardio,
that on
let's
people's
get it.
stories, like I'm like, mate, please calm down.
Save the David Goggins for the last 4 weeks, guys.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Well, pleasure to have you, Adrian. Thank you very much for coming on, buddy.
pleasure. It's nice to have like a bit of a back and forth chat, and hopefully some people will take some stuff from it.
No worries, cool. Dan, have we got anything else to wrap up with? Or?
No, I think we've got next episode. We've got Jason. So that's
Oh,
something to look forward to in a couple of weeks' time. And
That's like parallels, isn't it? Good. Cool. Right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And
Right.
we will all speak to you very soon.